Good afternoon. My name is Jim Swartz. I'm on the MAFAC Exhibit Committee, and I'm here today with Clayton Hubert. Good afternoon, Clayton.
Good afternoon, Jim.
Good thing I have your card and your poster for your show,
Yeah.
Casting Vessels. I would hardly know you if I didn't have these. Actually, Clayton was a student of mine at Southwest State and even did some assisting for me in sculpture and ceramics. Really a good student. And I remember the day in class when he was talking to another student, and afterwards I think he felt guilty that he was kind of interrupting a lecture. And we began to talk, and it turns out his dad likes to weld and make things, was really interested in metal casting. And often you hear that and you think, well, yeah, it's a mild interest, but it turns out he's just rabid. You know, it's gone too far. And you guys have done the Hot Iron Days in Lamberton, Minnesota.
Yep.
This will be the 11th coming
11th, yep,
and
11th
that's
annual.
in September.
Yep.
And it's quite an event. And at that event, there's Friday night metal casting pour, cast iron, and then a Saturday sand workshop and metal casting event. Clayton and his dad and his brother have built the furnaces that are used for the iron pours. And what we thought we'd do is have Clayton today talk about the sculpture that he makes. His show that actually was lucky enough to help him cast a lot of these pieces on May 1st or 2nd.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Right in there.
And which is kind of neat to do a whole show at one time. I think these are some of the molds that you were.
Yep. Those are some of the molds.
Clayton, why don't you tell the viewers a basic overview of the cast iron process that you go through to be able to make these
one of these
durable cast iron vessels, and maybe a little background into the interesting aspect is that your grandfather owned a scrapyard in Lamberton, so you were around metal, and your dad was around metal as just a family tradition for years and years and years.
Yep. I guess like Jim said, I grew up with metal in the family. Grandpa owned a scrapyard, and I spent a lot of time out there as a kid. My dad spent a lot of time out there as a kid, and as he grew up, he learned how to create anything, make anything out of scrap. And which came in handy when we got into iron casting, and we saw what other people were doing and how they were casting and what kind of furnaces they had and whatnot. And we walked around them, we stepped them off, we measured them, took pictures next to them, and came home, and he helped, and he did quite a bit of it, built a furnace. And actually I've got the process down here. I've got a picture of the original furnace, our first furnace that we built. While I was in college, I'd go home on weekends and I'd help him build it, and it just kind of got out of control. It got bigger and bigger and bigger as we went, and ended up becoming about a 13, 14 foot fire brick cupola that we were able to melt iron in. With the scrapyard, we come about the cast iron very easily. We still own the scrapyard in Lamberton. When I began this, my grandpa was still around and helped us, and he'd haul iron up here to Marshall and have it crushed right at Becker's, and bring it back in small handleable pieces. And then what we would do is we would load this furnace, this cupola, with charges of coke, or refined charcoal, and these smaller chunks of iron. And we'd melt them down and pour them into the sand casting, into our sand molds that we had made. And we could pour the liquid iron in there. When it cools, we have our almost our finished product. We've got our metal piece, and we can clean it up and patina it to whatever color we'd like. So like I say, the family aspect of it is a big part of it, I guess.
And cast iron as a material, it's certainly less expensive than bronze or brass.
Oh, yes.
And historically was used before steel and structural steel. Fairly strong compressive strength, very used for engine blocks, farm implements, really an industrial process, and all the old gadgets or trinkets that even you might find out on the Thursdays on 3rd Street right outside at a vendor. You could probably find some old cast iron implements.
Right.
And those were made using the smelting or the iron melting process. I think a good way to explain it is if you've ever started a charcoal grill by putting a few briquettes and lighter fluid on it in a match. Eventually, if you wait long enough, they'll turn white and get kind of warm, and you can cook your hamburgers or hot dogs or fish or whatever.
Right.
And another way to speed it up is to take a coffee can, cut the top and bottom out, make a cylinder, and pile your charcoal in it, put some lighter fluid on it, charcoal lighter, and ignite it, and just the draft of air going through will very quickly speed up the process. You can get closer to what happens in the iron furnace by taking a hair dryer and pumping in air underneath up,
Right.
and that superheats those coals, gets it very, very hot. Your can will even glow. But you're just after the heat in that so you can cook your food. In this process, Clayton would take the little broken up chunks of iron that go in the top of the furnace, and they hit the hot coals, melt, and collect in the bottom, what's called a well. And your furnace that you guys built is insulated with fire brick like you might find in a fireplace.
Right.
So it can
Right.
withstand the heat that sometimes gets up to about 4,000 degrees.
Yep.
Very, very hot. And that causes this chunks of old, usually broken radiator iron, not automotive radiators, but radiators, steam radiators like you might find in a house.
Like household
That's the
radiators. Yep.
premium-
Yep.
Premium metal. And so it takes a long time to learn this craft and get experience in it, and most people don't build their own equipment like your family did.
Right.
You'd be like an itinerant musician, and you travel around to various iron pours at universities where they have often the resources and the space and the equipment to build the
Right.
iron furnaces. And you did that too.
That's how I originally got into it. Jim invited me to come along to the U of M, University of Minnesota. I'm going to say it was the 35th or somewhere in there, iron pour, and maybe even earlier. But I kind of caught the bug. I got the itch to create cast iron art, and from there it just got worse.
Often, as it happens, somebody mentors you, pass on the skill, you become addicted to the process.
Yep.
Both because you can make art out of the iron fairly inexpensively, but also because of the camaraderie, the fire,
Yep.
the energy. It's on a cross between a football game and a riot, I guess. So
It is.
it's really, really interesting, and all the sparks and the, like it's this photo.
Yep.
A lot of the energy, and it's, 4th of July coming up is very much sparkler-like, and lots of glowing metal. Very, very cool. If you've ever been around the stream of hot iron, it's absolutely amazing and quite addictive. You can feel the radiation from 5, 6, 7 feet away, just like you'd sit around a campfire.
Yep.
So if you get people together,
But
all your buddies,
it's about the camaraderie. It's
Yeah.
the group of people getting together and creating the art, melting it down. It is possible to cast iron on your own, but I wouldn't prefer it that way.
Right.
It's definitely part of the process, the group of people that you get together to create it.
And so it's a lot of fun.
Yes, it is.
Your pieces you feel like there's a part of everybody in them.
Right.
So you went along on some iron pours and you saw sculpture.
Yep.
And I think the thing that's really interesting, you were a student at Southwest State, and you went on a lot of iron pours. We participated together on a lot of these, and you became very skilled at pouring metal, pouring the hot iron down the right mold and getting it to come out, and you made some kind of experimental things, and it seemed like just that last Lamberton pour where you started to do these basket forms.
Right.
We see, it clicked in my mind that finally the light bulb went off and you could combine all this experience that you had with the knowledge of being able to do the cast iron and really get something quite interesting out. And
Right.
for me, that was really cool. I know what's happened to me back when I was in graduate school, you know, and you just hope that happens, the light goes on
Right. Right.
someday.
The mold making process is a big part of casting iron sculpture, and like Jim said, I've been running the sand shop in Lamberton at our hot iron days pour for 11 years
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
and in 11 years I've probably helped with nearly 1,000 different sculptural pieces, putting them in sand and making them work. So throughout the process of doing that, I've kind of, it did, like Jim said, it clicks now, and I can kind of see what I want in my head to come out of this piece. So some of these are done in a subtractive manner, and some of them are done in what we call a burnout, where we burn out the styrofoam and the iron takes its place. But many of them are made from a subtractive process where I just have the sand and I cut away the part that I want to become iron. So it's a little bit of backwards thinking, or creating a negative that will become the positive in iron, which is not, I would say, a basic mold making process.
No.
I guess it takes having done it once or twice to kind of know what you're getting into.
Yeah, for instance, people that work with clay, they're taking a soft material and squishing it and forming it, whether you're a potter or a sculptor, and you can see the form that you have. You know, and Clayton's talking about is these molds, you have to think of the negative space that's inside of this block of sand, and either how are you going to get a cavity or a negative space that will fill up with metal, or how can you get a base one, and then as he did on these bowls, carve away and add other forms to it by subtracting some of the sand, scratching into it or cutting into it. It gets fairly complicated, but after a while you catch on and it just becomes second nature to do them.
This is the first one. This is the bowl Jim was talking about, where I tried something I'd never tried before. And like I said, having done the cast iron in the past and making the sand molds in the past, I kind of had an idea in my head of how this should turn out, and I wanted to see how thin I could go. Was another thing. Kind of challenged myself with how thin I can go. So I came up with a process of making a bowl out of sand, and then cutting into that bowl of sand to make this pattern, and then getting the iron down to it. So there's a sprue system that comes down. There's a cup on top, and then some runners that go out to the edges of this bowl. And what you have to imagine is this liquid iron comes down into the cup, out through these runners, and then fills this bowl. But it's got to travel between all of this to get down to the bottom. And you have to have hot iron to do something thin like that and intricate like that. So it helps to have the equipment that we have, because we can create pretty hot iron with our cupola. So I was very satisfied with that when that turned out, and like I said, or Jim said, he saw it and he thought that was a good path to follow, and I wanted to perfect that. So I moved on and I added a rim because I could hide some of the...
People are calling right now.
Yeah, people are calling right now.
Better get them while you can.
I added a rim to it just so I could clean up some more of the imperfections I got on the first one and kind of move on to a more clean lined piece. Also, if you notice this one, the inside is smooth and the outside has the pattern on it. So just a couple of different, every one of these bowls and vessels is just a little bit different process than the next. So those are a subtractive process where I take away the sand. Some of the other ones are created out of clay first. Say this one, I made, there's another call.
Another call coming in.
This one I made a sand dome and added the clay to it. I'll move it around here so you can kind of see. Added the clay to it and created the shape that I wanted it out of the clay. And then finished the sand making process with the same sprue system to fill it. And then this one, the unique patina on it is actually a electroplated copper onto it to patina it. So one more aspect to the cast iron process would be patinaing them, coming up with what color they're going to be. Lots of times you get, if we go back this way, you get a bare metal look, or you get a rust, or something in between, like the dark brown that you can get with this one, and a variety of browns. So I wanted to add a little more color to the show. So I messed around with some of my high school science, and found a way to electroplate them with copper, I guess, and pull some of the copper out of the scrap yard and add that to the show.
Cast iron is an interesting material, and one of the reasons you have so many parts and pieces around in scrap yards and in antique shops is that when it rusts, it kind of seals itself off. It isn't like mild steel, that your car's made out of. It'll eventually rot through and just rust into just hardly anything. Cast iron kind of seals itself off and protects itself. In your kitchen, you would have aluminum pots and pans. Aluminum's going to melt and become liquid at about 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. Bronze, if you have some brass or bronze around the house or the kitchen, that's going to melt about somewhere between 1900 and 2100 Fahrenheit. The cast iron is 2700. 77.
Okay. Yeah.
Really, really hot. More than twice as hot as aluminum. So it takes a lot of energy and a lot of material to be able to melt the broken up radiator chunks. The fuel for it is coke, which looks very much like black lava rock that you see around home landscaping. It kind of like
it has the weight of it too. It's very light.
Very light, almost like volcanic ash.
Right.
And then what that is it's a coal that's been burnt and gotten really hot, and then oxygen is suffocated from that coal, and all the impurities burn off, and you're left with just pure fuel. It's very, very hot, much, much hotter than charcoal and that you could buy at a store. It's very, very hot, especially with forced air once they made it. Now you take about 2 hours to burn in this furnace, which these forms kind of symbolize to you.
They kind of look like they're,
Yeah. And the fact that they're hollow, just like your furnace, this isn't insulated. There wouldn't be any reason to insulate it, but if you want to do, you could put that on a grate, fill it full of charcoal, light the bottom, then you could make a mini cupola.
Right.
And you could melt aluminum or brass in it probably. Even without the insulation.
Yep.
It's the principle of the smokestack, the vertical chimney. Everybody's house, unless it's brand new, probably had a chimney at one time, and the hot air starts at the bottom and goes up and out. The smoke goes up and out. And if you can capture the energy inside of it, you can do something with it. In this case, Clayton melts iron chunks and turns it into a liquid and then pours it into his molds. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the sand molds. We're using a sand that you can buy at local lumber yards. We're lucky to live in the mecca of silica sand. Our sand in this area around La Crosse, Wisconsin, and the southern Minnesota, central Minnesota, is a semi-round grain, and it rolls around kind of like marbles and packs very nicely, very consistent, very clean. Unfortunately, it's the sand used for fracking too.
Right,
So
right.
when we were, doing foundry work at Southwest when you were a student, I think we could buy 100 pounds of sand for $2.25.
Right,
But
right.
now you're paying, what, over 10 bucks?
Yeah, it's about $10 a hundred now.
And mostly
Yeah.
because of the use in fracking, mixing it with chemicals and pumping it back down in the ground.
Right, right.
But it's really a cool material. And if you even want to, you can recycle it. I think your dad uses a lot of the molds for road bases too, when he works with
Yeah, it
roads.
gets recycled back
The U
into
of M does that
Yep.
too. All the
Yep.
sand that they run through their huge foundry gets broken up and put into roads, the foundation for roads. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting recycling aspect.
Right,
It
right.
just feels right to do it.
Right.
Feels cool. Clayton, maybe mention a little bit about the coloring on some. I know this one. If we could move over here,
You want to see that one?
yeah. You might think that you call a patina is something that you can occur naturally or you can apply it. Why don't you talk about that bowl?
This bowl here?
That's basically the kind of cleaned up raw
Right,
iron.
right. This is a raw iron look. I did seal it with a like an automotive clear coat, just to keep it from rusting, so I could keep the shine of the bare metal. But this one here, as we move on over, this is actually, I made this bowl out of, I'll tip it a little, Cheerios. So it's a cereal bowl. And through the process, I let it rust. I copper plated it. I wire brushed it. I put it in an ammonia chamber and played around with a lot of different patinaing aspects and really got a kind of a unique patina on it that some of the other pieces don't have. But that's part of the process to me, is experimenting and seeing what I can get away with or what I can do, what I can make something look like. And I really like what this one did. However, it still is patinaing as we speak.
It's alive.
Yeah, it
Little
it's kinda-
pieces are flaking
little
off. and
flaking
popping
off. Yeah, probably due to the temperature change in the room.
And
and
some of the
whatnot.
chemicals stuck on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and some of the chemical on it, and it continues to patina. So we'll see. It's alive, like you
Yeah.
Jim said.
Clayton could put it outside
piece of
for
its
a
own.
year and it would, kind of the weather and the moisture would kind of seal it up and
Yep.
then be very, very durable. Any of these pieces put outside will eventually change and rust a bit, but again, the surface seals up. And it's hard to beat a long-term natural patina on cast iron. It's just very, very beautiful. Clayton, mention a little bit about the family connection. I think that's unusual, where your dad and your brother, who has a degree in automotive engineering from
Right.
Mankato, so he's really handy and very clever. You're very clever. Your dad is kind of like Mr. Wizard.
Yeah.
He just is able to
I guess,
invent.
yeah, the whole family aspect of it. Like I said, when I began, my grandpa was still around. He's passed away since, but so he had the scrap yard. So like I said, the cast iron and aluminum and copper and whatever we were looking to make anything out of was always easily at hand. And then, like I say, went to school, came back, and my dad, being able to build anything, was able to help build this cupola. And it didn't hurt to have a little education behind us. My brother Mike and I both went to college and came back with different ideas about what we should do and how we should do it. And with Jim's guidance and some other people that cast iron, we were able to make one of the better furnaces that I've worked on and run it. So myself, I got a job teaching art back in my hometown, Lamberton. I'm the art teacher at Red Rock Central. My brother moved back to town, back to Lamberton. He works designing pieces for elevators at Elevator Works in Lamberton. And Dad works for the Redwood County Highway Department right there. My mom's at the school.
Yeah.
So when we get into this stuff and we start making sculpture, the sand shop's at Dad's garage, and the chasing shop's in my garage, and some of the sand stuff is downtown at the Historical Society, which is what we work through when we're doing the cast iron. The hot iron days is through the Lamberton Historical Society. Lamberton has a history of blacksmithing. They had a historic blacksmith shop there, and when my brother and I were kids, they went through it and they inventoried everything in the blacksmith shop. And I can remember being just a little guy helping clean up the blacksmith shop and really getting into, there was a couple of guys running the forge there, and getting into that type of stuff, which kind of maybe was the first little bite of the bug to make stuff out of metal. But it's fortunate that I grew up in Lamberton and I live in Lamberton, because we have that rich history of working with metal. And then we were able to bring in some blacksmiths to work at the Historical Society, and then out back we put up our furnace and we cast iron. So we make a whole hot iron days out of it. And I don't think that would have been the case had I not gone away to college at Southwest State and run into Jim and some of these other guys and started casting iron. And just a plug for Lamberton Hot Iron Days. What is it this year? The 9th, 10th?
Yeah, somewhere in there. About
first weekend after Labor Day.
Yeah.
The first weekend after Labor Day. You can come to Lamberton with nothing, create something either out of styrofoam or clay or wood or like I did, subtractive, where you start with a piece of sand and you take part of it away, and then you'll be able to bring it over to the pour for. We'll cast it in iron, and after it's cool, you can pick it up, take it home. So,
and the price is very reasonable. Fun. It just pretty much pays for the materials and the chemicals for the sand.
Yep.
Which the sand mold is basically this 30-40 sand, silica sand that comes in bag form that you can get in any local hardware store. You have a binder and a catalyst. It's basically like an epoxy that holds the sand together however you form it. After some short time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it becomes quite hard, and you can move it around and it'll withstand the hot metal. What is your favorite piece, Clayton?
My favorite piece?
Oh
my goodness. I guess I would say my favorite piece is probably the first one. It's kind of the one that's the one over here that kind of sprang the rest of the whole thing.
That was the Hot Iron Days piece.
That was the Hot Iron Days piece. That was the first go at making a vessel, I guess, making a bowl, and it kind of sprang from there to try to do something like it, but not it, and more and more and more. My wife's favorite piece, however, is this one here. I'll point that one out. She really likes that one, the way it cleaned up, and has a little cleaner lines than some of the others. I kind of like the wild inconsistency of some of them, and she likes the ones with a little more order, and I just enjoy making them, I guess.
And you learn a lot, back to the music analogy. The more you do, the better you get at it. If you do another show, think how much better that will be, and that just happens as growth of being an artist.
Yep.
There's a lot of iron casting going on in the Midwest. It really started around Mankato, at Mankato State University, at least in Minnesota, and Julius Smith was the grandfather of cast iron at Iowa State. In fact, I don't think you were at the conference in New Jersey where he did a one-man iron pour. He had a small cupola, and he had a ring on it, and he actually did all the charging and melted the iron and poured his molds.
Right.
All just one person. It was really pretty cool. And he's quite famous. If you want to look up, Google Julius Schmidt for an iron caster. And my professor in high school, and just really lucky, he was a Jesuit priest, Lee Lubers, Father Lee Lubers. He went on to teach at Clayton. He did iron casting in the summers with Julius Schmidt when I was in grad school. So all my connections are with people who had done some metal casting.
Right.
I was lucky to work on the railroad in Omaha in the summers. So I was around welding equipment. You
Right.
mentioned like you,
Right.
and this was the blacksmith shop at the Union Pacific Railroad, where you had tongs the size of automobiles, you know, to smash axles and stuff. So somehow if you're around it, you know, it becomes
you catch the bug.
okay to do it, and it
Yeah.
becomes familiar to you, and you do it. It's like really cool. You know, when people come to a pour, I mean, encourage them. I think probably Lamberton would be the closest pour for people in our area.
Right.
And there's a Friday night demonstration where you can see metal cast at night.
Yep.
All the
That's where you get
sparks
some of
and
the sparks and
the glowing.
Yep.
And then the sand shop and the pour during the next day. And then we'll probably have one in Marshall next year, 2017, Sounds of Summer, connected to the sculpture going out at the new Red Baron Arena and Expo. I know the artist was thinking about maybe doing an iron pour for that as a community celebration. So that's a possibility. Tends to bring people together and
Right.
celebrates sculpture and work.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else you can think of? Words of wisdom, Clayton, on what it's like to be an artist, or why you didn't become an engineer or an airline pilot,
I don't know.
or
The passion has always been for art. So
a chemist, you know, or a
Right.
biology teacher.
Right. Well, you know, with art, you get a little bit of everything. There's a little math in here. There's a little science with the chemistry, with the mixing with making of the hard sand. There's some chemistry in the patinas, but our teachers get to do it all. So that's where the passion is,
So
and
you-
showing other people how to do it
Yeah.
is another passion of mine.
And
Being
you
able
have
to-
some of the students, your students make molds and they come
Oh yeah,
and do
yep,
the casting.
yep. I do it twice a year at Red Rock Central. We cast iron in the fall and aluminum in the spring. So they get a chance to do what I do and see what I do.
Yeah.
So
And not to leave out another important aspect of your education, though, with another person that went on a lot of trips, John Sterner,
Yep.
teaches at Lakeview,
yep.
and he was your art ed
Yep, art
professor.
education professor.
And
All
so
around great
you
guy.
interned with him and
Yep.
learned how to do many things. And just knowing how to make art isn't going to make you
Well, and
a successful
to,
teacher.
To put a plug
right?
out there, you said my brother and my dad, but Jim and John Sterner and Tim Garrity are my wrecking crew. They're the guys that carried the hot iron around with me and helped cast a lot of these pieces. I might have created the sand molds, but it wouldn't have got cast into iron had I not had 4 or 5 guys to help carry it around. So thanks to those
Yeah.
guys.
And it's very much pass it on. You'll be passing this on to other,
Oh yeah, yep.
either your kids or your students. Or
Yep. I've got
others.
students that have the itch. They've got
Yeah.
the
And
the
maybe
bug.
they'll go off to grad school or, or a school somewhere too. It keeps the cycle going,
Right.
keeps the music going, the music of iron.
Yep. Any other questions?
No, I think we have your
Did we hit everything?
you have your nice book you designed, or Alma Hale,
Alma
who's
Hale
the
did that
chair
one,
of the MAFAC exhibit committee, designed this poster. He's a graphic designer. He wasn't able to be there today. He's doing a workshop for students in Iowa. But you did design your card, Clayton.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you like to do graphic design. You do great T-shirts. Every year you do a T-shirt for the Lamberton Hot Iron Days.
Yep. Yep. Always make the
So I've
t-shirts.
got, I think, all of them. I only have 700 T-shirts.
Right.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed a little bit of a tour into Clayton Hubert's art, his cast iron vessels. And unfortunately, it comes down in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then it'll live only in video, in the ether, in the cloud, that people can access it. And keep an eye out for Clayton. Look for the hot iron days in September.
Yep. Weekend after Labor Day.
Labor Day. And you can come and watch without charge. And it's very, very minimal charge to be able to do the mold and make a piece.
Yep.
So Clayton, congratulations. I'm
Thank
really
you.
glad you
Well, thank
went
you.
from that bowl to
Thank
the
you
whole show.
and MAFAC for this opportunity. It was great.
Now we're glad to have you here.